Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Collegiate Athletics Advocate. My name is Will, and today we actually have a bit of a different episode. I'm going to take you guys on a bit of a throwback to at least 4 months ago when I went on Jason Kelly's Let's Run podcast, the UNLV podcaster, and we talked about litigation between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West and settlement, and I think it's just going to it's going to provide some perspective on where we once thought this was going and where it's going to. And I think this kind of perspective is really important. And I just never got to share it on my channel. It's up on his page already. So, if you don't want to watch it here or you've already watched it, that's fine. But I just thought it might be nice to give it a little throwback and add some context towards some of the videos that I'm making and going to be posting here in the future. So I hope you guys enjoy.
Folks, welcome to the show today. Grateful to have on the Collegiate Athletics Advocate, CAA, as I'll call you from here on out. No problem. He is a awesome Twitter account. I will put his Twitter account bio in the link to this video, in the description of this video, so that you can follow him. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. How you feeling?
Hey, Jason, I honestly didn't realize how much of a mouthful Collegiate Athletics Advocate was going to end up being, but that's definitely been the track record thus far. I also have a YouTube page.
Yes, you have a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
Cool. What are the primary topics that you cover, and kind of what's your MO online and in the content space?
Well, I'm a former college athlete. I love covering collegiate athletics, and mainly I focus on Western college football. Recently, I've taken an interest in Western realignment. It's been a lot to talk about, and I think mostly Pac-12 stuff, I would say.
Yeah. I that's how we got connected, through Pac-12 discussions, throughout Pac-12, realignment debates and stuff. And I have always been primarily just UNLV, and I had my podcast and I did live streams before and after games, and I will still continue to do all that. But recently I was like, I'll try and get my YouTube channel up to something more than just where I post my live streams. So everybody, please, if you have not done so already, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the Let's Run podcast. Please like the video. I'm trying to bring on more guests so that I can have people push back against my ideas, and hopefully that I can, develop myself as an advocate of my own, specifically for the UNLV football team and the Runnin' Rebel basketball team. But it's kind of crazy times going on right now, and with this mediation, and I don't know if you saw the GCU news today, and apparently Boise State and San Diego State are going to try and use legal action. What's the deal with mediation right now? What's the holdup? Kind of what's your view on how this is all going?
Well, yeah, I mean, the news of GCU today was definitely spicy, and the reaction even spicier. I think definitely the holdup is the dollar amount. I think it's an obvious answer, but I also think there might be a 1-2 game out of conference scheduling agreement that you're going to see come out of this mediation, and that will end up affecting the dollar figure. I think they probably agreed to it already, and they're just working out the finer details.
Interesting. So I've always thought that, the number that the Mountain West schools are going to receive versus the, I guess I hadn't thought about it in terms, but yes, a scheduling agreement definitely would probably lessen the liquid cash amount that the Mountain West schools would receive. But I've always kind of thought about it in terms of also like how that money's being paid. A lot of times realignment fees, exit fees are paid out over a long period of time, like 7 to 10 years, 5 to 10 years. Whereas the Mountain West schools want it as liquid cash, which I think is pretty difficult. I went over that in the video I did breaking down the lawsuit. But a scheduling agreement is something that I had brought up. Kind of what is that? I think that a lot of people have talked about that, and I think it's a very good idea. Why do you think it's a good idea? What benefit would each conference serve by having a scheduling agreement? And what does that look like?
Well, right now, I think it's a great point that you make about the cash amount. I think the Pac-12 is. I don't think you're going to see a lump sum payment that the Mountain West schools might want. It's going to be more of an overtime kind of thing. But I think really what this scheduling agreement might look like is. One, the benefit is it protects rivalries. I love Western college football. I've been watching the Mountain West for a while now, and the last thing I would want to do is not see the border war going forward. I think we're still going to see the border war regardless of a scheduling agreement. But just to kind of those historic rivalries that you saw in the Mountain West shouldn't die. That should not be a symptom of college realignment. I think that's the worst kind of symptom of this kind of thing. So I'm hoping that you see, especially since the both conferences are kind of down on football playing members now. The Pac-12 set to probably only have 7 conference games unless they double up with their rivals. They need more games. A lot of teams already have their schedules set. It's no secret. So rearranging those kinds of things, it's costly, it's tedious. I think you're going to see a mutually beneficial scheduling agreement come out of this realignment mediation.
I agree that it's a great, I think there's a couple of impediments to that. Not anything that can't be overcome, of course, but like, again, I'm sure that Mountain West schools are probably just like, you want to do a scheduling agreement with us, but you wouldn't just merge, like you wouldn't just join the conference and save your money and your for the 2031 actual big and really important conference realignment instead of this stupid one. And I'm sure that's how Mountain West schools would feel about it. And so I wonder how much pushback there could be. Obviously, I think they would rather play regional schools and maintain rivalries. But do you think that I just think there's a lot of bad blood here, man? Like I worry about their ability to work together in that kind of way. Especially, I think these comments that San Diego State and Boise State made about GCU joining the Mountain West. I don't know that these people can be in a room together without wanting to beat each other up right now.
Well, I think
Does that make sense?
the good thing is that a lot of them aren't in the room.
True.
That's I think right now you've got Gloria, you've got Teresa, and then you've got kind of the litigators, and I believe Colorado State, Boise State, and
Utah State.
Utah State have sent some sort of representation into that room just because they're the ones that are actually involved in the litigation. Though I would say the Grand Canyon news sparking rumors of litigation. San Diego State's not litigating the Mountain West because they can't, because they'd be suing themselves, with San Jose State. It doesn't work. I think they're making us a fuss because after they left the conference made a decision that affected them, and they didn't get paid for Grand Canyon joining the conference, and a lot of reasons to just whine and moan for the reason that they want to get more, they want to have more favorable terms out of that dollar amount. I think bad blood, obviously, in terms of a collaboration standpoint, doesn't go that well, but at the same time, I don't know that it's that personal for these business types, and a cheap out of conference game, that's hard to come by. I think for both conferences, and they're going to be at a good level. If they've got bad blood, let them settle it on the field.
Well, I mean, yeah, I agree with you that it's the right play, that it's the right route. I just worry that I know personally, and I'm not a reporter. I don't report on UNLV. People at UNLV do not like me because I have consistently skewered the school for what I thought was sorry, 1 second. I just need to adjust this real quick. I have consistently skewered the school for what I thought was just an idiotic decision not to kill off the Mountain West when we had the chance to be a part of doing that. I also just think the Pac-12 was idiotic in how it didn't kill off the Mountain. Like, people always talk about the competition between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West, and they always say, well, the Pac-12 already took the best schools from the Mountain West, and that's absolutely true. Almost all of the best brands in the Mountain West were taken. The Mountain West, so that's what the Pac-12 has done, and that's the tool that the Pac-12 has against the Mountain West. But the Mountain West tool against the Pac-12 is the agreements that all the people signed, all the parties signed. They have legal tools against the Pac-12, and that's also a powerful, negotiating tactic or negotiating tool. And the Pac-12 having the ability to kill off the Mountain West and not doing it, it just, man, I wonder, and I actually do think, that it's probably worse, and we might just disagree on this. I think that it's probably worse than in terms of bad blood than people might think. I know that our ex-president Keith Whitfield and J.D. Wicker were not big fans of each other. Keith Whitfield was the chair of the Mountain West board before he resigned a couple of months ago. So the chair of the Mountain West board was the president of UNLV. If you want to know part of the reason why we're still in the Mountain West, there you go. And Gloria has basically clawed herself into the city of Las Vegas, whether that be, the UNLV administration or the reporters, and basically made, UNLV the Mountain West's biggest advocate, which I think is pretty smart negotiating tactics. But I really think, and again, we might just disagree on this. I really think these parties, especially the Boise State, San Diego State side versus the Mountain West leadership side, I really do think they absolutely despise each other. And the Mountain West has been withholding revenue from these schools since October. Think about how hard that is on an athletic program to start having, basically have a year and a half of revenue being withheld from you, which is part of the reason why we're in mediation right now. But, the Mountain West starting withholding revenue when they announced they were going to the Pac-12 back in September and October, it's brutal on these athletic departments and on the money side for them. So I think it might be worse than people think.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. You bring up a lot of really solid points, and I could see that, and you can see it online. Although, and where I come from is, just kind of participating in the space, is seeing people go to war in comment sections, and I don't see, even though JD Wicker and the pro rata we deserve, that whole thing that, the folks on other shows like to talk about. I think that I think it's a lot more fans going to war than it is those administrators. That being said, we're not in the rooms. We can't see it. It's their job to maintain a decorum. And I think in a lot of ways, the mood and really the tempo of a fan base that is really gonna that's going to affect the higher ups more than you think. They listen, and they, at least if they're good at their job, they're listening to their fans.
Yeah. And not to bring up a whole can of worms, that's part of the reason why, I think you'd seen this video when there was the whole Pac-12 smear campaign stuff going on, which was a ridiculous conversation from a lot of different angles. But people were like, well, why would the Pac-12 or why would the Mountain West care about what's being said between fans on social media? And I think people underestimate how big of a deal a fan base and a social media fan base is on universities. How administrators, people that work in these universities are on social media and they see a lot of this stuff, if not all this stuff. And so I think that, the effect that social media can have, and I don't want to go too deep into that because I feel like I've said my piece on it. There's not some grand conspiracy going on, but whatever. If you want to bring it up, that's fine a little bit. But I think that people underestimate how big of a deal fan bases are, social media is, how that steers conversations around programs, and how that can really affect these schools.
No, yeah, I loved that piece you did. That video you did on the smear campaign, I thought was brilliant, and you said it perfectly. Really, this is status quo, guys. I think that people have been smearing people. It's all PR these days. It's all about what's your brand. How can you rile up your fan base? How can you get it going? And how can you boost your brand? How can you boost your value? Both of these conferences are still out to market for their media partners. Yes, the Pac-12 has CBS now, but the Pac-12 has said there's going to be multiple partners. The Mountain West still hasn't signed back with Fox again. So it's clear this market is in flux. And you are trying to do, if I'm an school administrator, I'm doing everything that I possibly can to increase the dollar amount coming in the door. So yeah, we don't need to talk about it that much more. I think you said it perfectly in your video. If you guys haven't seen it, check it out. It's great. But yeah, I think really when we're looking at the kind of, if we talk about the Pac-12 versus the Mountain West, you've got more schools in the Mountain West right now currently than are in the Pac-12, and that seems to be kind of this point of contention, is like people see more additions as more wins, and people want to see a ninth edition of the Pac-12. I think that's a big hurdle right now.
And I think they absolutely should. I mean, now look, a terrible addition, I think, like adding Sac State. We've talked quite a bit about Sac State, and I did a video yesterday on Sac State on why it's just like not a good option, whether it be money or there are so many different reasons why I doubt the validity and the value of Sac State right now. But it is better. You don't want to add a school that is completely useless and actually an anchor to you. which I think Sac State might be, at least for the short term, definitely. But like, people absolutely should want more school. If you're going to have these two conferences, having a conference smaller than 10 schools is a hindrance, like, for these conferences. It is important to have enough schools for scheduling reasons. It's important. It makes it easier on athletic departments that are having to, basically charter flights across the country consistently. Having some form of sustainability and repetition and predictability in your schedule is beneficial. And having enough members is a key part of that, which is kind of why we had been talking about the scheduling agreement. Why I agree with you that I think that it should happen. But the Pac-12 absolutely needs to have 10 members. Like, at some point, if it wants to be a sustainable long-term conference, maybe for 2026 or 2027, they could pull it off for a year or two. But sustainable long-term conferences, look for conferences with less than 9 members. Look for them in history. Like, the Sun Belt had one season with 7 members in 2006. Otherwise, everybody's got 9, 10, 11, 12. And so long-term, the Pac-12 needs this, and and we can talk about this now, there just, like, aren't that many good options. And so it's better than adding a Sac State that's a complete anchor and going to kill your conference, maybe, although I do think Sac State has long-term potential. But at the same time, it is important. Like, NIU was a big win for the Mountain West. I think UTEP was a good win for the Mountain West. And so, how do you think, what's your opinion on adding more schools to the Pac-12?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, eight schools just isn't sustainable. There's a reason why the Pac hasn't been the Pac-8 in a very long time. And it really, they need to do some work on adding schools. And the biggest hurdle that I see is that there just aren't a lot of affordable options right now, for 2026. So I think you're going to have to tough it out for 2026. The only affordable options would be in conferences like Conference USA or Independence. We already said Sac State, not feasible. It's just not going to work.
Not right now. Maybe
Not right
5
now,
years. Yeah.
at the very least. Yeah, and then New Mexico State, it's just not a fit. The gap between the New Mexico States of the world and schools in the Pac-12 is just too far. And I don't think people realize, like, I love New Mexico State. I want them to find a home. I'd love to see them in the Mountain West. Even then, it'd be a jump up for them to be in the Mountain West. They'd have to invest more because there is just that big of a gap in college football right now. And so, yeah, for 2026, there aren't a lot of options. The AAC schools that everybody talks about, that's not happening in the short term. That's maybe a 2027 if you could get lucky, if you can convince them to come over, which, conflicting reports on whether or not that's going to happen. I would say, I'd love to see a UTSA in there as a full member, but, adding a school in Tennessee, in all sports, having been an athlete myself and having been on 8-hour bus rides, I can tell you, not fun. Talk about 2-segment flights. That's like a 9-hour travel day of flying alone, so when people talk about new additions, you want to look regional, which is why everyone has continued to stir up this idea that maybe through mediation, there are paths that a school, maybe one of the remaining top brands in the Mountain West, could make it over to the Pac. Now there has to be a willingness. And also, I think really the only one that they actually want is UNLV. I think the only other school that you could make a decent argument for would be the University of New Mexico, right? But at the end of the day, do you think that's elevating your conference? A UNLV would, yes, I think so. I really, it sucked that they didn't make it in the first time or the second time, actually, for that matter. So I think, Jason, you've talked about that ad nauseum, but really just, I think the only path really is if they're able to squeak something out of mediation. And the only way that happens is if there is a significant amount of money missing from that dollar amount that we've been talking about.
Yeah. The Mountain West has pledged $61 million of liquid cash to its schools. That is what the Mountain West has to try and get. That is and if I was the Mountain West, I would say, I would tell, hey, no poaching fees, no problem. We'll reduce the exit fees. If it was $61 million, that would be like 12 million a school or so, I think, or 11 million a school or so, which I don't think is like crazy. How that's paid out might be crazy. If you can't, lump sums might be a crazy way to pay that out. But like the Mountain West, I don't think is going to. I don't think is going to play ball with the Pac-12 that much. I mean, like because the Mountain West doesn't have a couple of the issues. Like the Mountain West is not as brand conscious in terms of who they add as the Pac-12 is, and rightly so. You know, like the Pac-12 is trying to elevate itself. They're trying to be the best of the Group of Five. They, as of right now, project to be the best of the Group of Five conference, but of course, games have not actually been played yet. But they do actually, they do legitimately and with good reason project to be the best Group of Five conference. The Mountain West can go to New Mexico State and say, "Hey, no problem, come on in." Pac-12 can't really do that. The Mountain West just has more options for expansion. NDSU is a school that I think the Mountain West would love to add. The Mountain West will add UC Davis by before 2030. And so, you know, having that flexibility and kind of the way that I've described it in the past is, I don't know if you've ever watched Game of Thrones, but, you know, Tyrion Lannister in that show says, you know what you are, wear it like armor, and it cannot be used to harm you. The Mountain West is a middling Group of Five conference with a couple of good brands, but, you know, not going to be the best of the Group of Five, but with a couple of schools that can elevate themselves pretty well. It knows exactly what it is. The Pac-12, I feel like, you know, and I don't blame them for this. They should be valuing themselves. You know, they should be trying to create something wonderful. But you know, I think the Mountain West just has more flexibility because of that. And if I was the Mountain West, I wouldn't do a schedule. Yeah, if I was Gloria Nevarez, now I as a UNLV fan would love a scheduling agreement, but I don't know that I would do that because I think the Pac-12 is kind of boxed out right now with legitimate options for additions to its conference. And of course, a lot of this is going to change in 2030, 2031 anyway. So a lot of these AAC schools, I see people bring up Memphis. Oh, they'll go to the Big East. And I'm always just like, guys, everything is going to blow up in 2030 anyway. Why would these schools take this leap right now, especially when a lot of them are struggling financially anyway, much like UNLV is? They're using the same logic that UNLV is. And so I wouldn't help out the Pac-12 if I was the Mountain West with any sort of scheduling agreement. I would say $61 million liquid cash. We'll cut your buyout fees down, exit fees down, and we'll get rid of the poaching fees completely. And the Mountain West would be completely happy with that result. What do you think about that mindset? And do you feel like, you know, what can the Pac-12 do to kind of counter those points?
Well, I think you're right. You know, I think the biggest advantage that I see out of the Pac-12 isn't going to be the media value. Yeah, I will remain optimistic. I think that 10 million is a fair number. Do I think it is leaning to the lower end? Yeah, it seems like the reports are indicating it's leaning down. But
Yeah.
most important thing, the only way you're going to get that up is by more inventory. It has to be good inventory, but you need more schools. The best selling point for the Pac-12 is access to the playoff. The way the rules are currently written, it is the top 5 conference champions that get the automatic bids. And
Yes.
with so many folks advocating for the 5+11 model, that looks like it's going to stay the same. I mean, if you find me a G5 school that can get into the playoff, you know, even if it was a 16 team playoff with an at-large bid, hats off to you, sir, and well done. If there are 2 G5 schools that are, or I guess, you know, G5 plus Pac-12, you know, in this new landscape, if there are 2 schools of that caliber that are able to make the playoff, fantastic. But realistically, the access to the playoff is going to be reserved for, and I think it's going to be at least 3 out of 5 times the Pac-12. I think you're looking at 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5 times until 2021 that the Pac-12 is going to own that spot. That comes with distribution. If that's your school, you get to keep half of the distribution that comes out of the playoff. So you're keeping the money that you earned. They're looking at performance-based revenue. It's going to be performance-based revenue sharing. So I think the appeal of the Pac-12 is relevancy. Now, the barriers for a school like Memphis or a school like Tulane, who are looking at a place like the ACC as their final resting place, you know, I think, yes, greener pastures, sure, but from from the standpoint of getting there, you have to be relevant enough over the next couple of years. And I personally think, maybe it's homerism, but I personally think, just given the brands that are in there, Boise State's going to own at least 2 of them, right? That Boise State is the odds-on favorite to make it to the college football playoff this year. So you're owning this massive segment of publicity that comes out of the college football world, and it's the most visibility that the G5 gets all year. So if you rob the G5 of that visibility, basically, if the Pac-12 is that fifth best conference consistently year over year, which it looks like it's going to be, that's the pitch. Is you need to stay relevant for when everything blows up in 2031, because it's going to blow up, and it's going to be, I think it could be massive, the amount of changes that we see in the landscape of college football. And maybe that's me, and I think that deserves its own video, so I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But that's where I stand. Is the appeal of the Pac-12 is relevancy.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from there, and obviously, I think that the best path for UNLV for relevancy would be to go into the Pac-12 and to beat Boise State and make the college football playoff, and that would be the most direct path for sure. But look at Boise State from 2021 to 2023. They had 8-5. They didn't. I think it's a little too much to just kind of assume that Boise State, after a season where they had Dirk Cutter return, who's an incredible offensive coordinator, previous head coach there, and a Heisman candidate. Obviously Boise State should absolutely be the group of 5, favorite to be in the college football playoff race. However, an 11-1 G5 school since the New Year's Six. This is kind of my favorite stat about this. An 11-1 G5 school since the New Year's Six bowls really started in that 2014 era. There's only been one time an 11-1 G5 school has not been the New Year's Six representative, and it was actually 2014 Fresno State, I believe. That includes. So if you're 11-1, it didn't matter what conference you were in. Western Michigan, they went to the New Year's Six bowls, which is I'm kind of doing that as an analogous version of the college football playoff. I know it's not exactly like that, but that's almost essentially how it worked in the past, where, the best group of 5 school would get that, that spot, the highest ranked group of 5 school would get that spot. And so I think these schools in the American are looking at it and saying, if Memphis goes 12-0 in the American, you have to go 11-1 or 12-0 to be the group of 5 representative. Very rarely you could see like a 10-2 situation. UNLV could have made it last year as a 12-2 or 11-2 team or something like that. But how good is a conference at providing you to an 11-1 or 12-0 record? And I think Memphis is looking at the AAC and saying, we can do that in the AAC. And we know through history, there is no doubt, there cannot be a debate that no matter what conference you're in, CUSA, the MAC, the Mountain West, whatever, no matter what G5 conference you're in, if you can go 11-1 or 12-0, it's not a guarantee. If a 12-0 Memphis and a 12-0 Boise State exists, I think Boise State's going to get the nod. But you've got a pretty good shot. And this is kind of UNLV's calculus and the Mountain West calculus as well, is that I think it might be a little overstated that it's just automatic. Now, it could be. I could be wrong about this, and I think that UNLV should be in the Pac-12. It could be something close to a 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 college football playoff bid. But what if it's a 2 out of 5 or a 1 out of 5? How confident do you really feel in Oregon State and Washington State moving down to the G5 level, which is what has happened? And we saw them really struggle against non-future Pac-12 schools in the Mountain West last year. Now, you could say that's an aberration, but Washington State loses to New Mexico, Wyoming. Oregon State didn't do very well against Mountain West schools, even future Mountain West schools. Boise State, they were coming off, they had a dream season, but they were coming off of like a 3-year stretch where they were kind of struggling. San Diego State football doesn't really look great right now, and I think they can turn it around, but is Lewis really going to do great there? Fresno State has their own myriad of issues, although I do believe in Matt Entz, and that is a good football program. Utah State, their level of funding is a lot lower right now than all of the other Pac-12 schools. Is it that crazy to bet against the Pac-12? I don't think it's insane. I don't think it's insane, even though I wish that the Pac-12 truly had taken the AAC top schools and UNLV. But I don't think it's as crazy of a notion to bet against the Pac-12 as people think it is.
You bring up a lot of really interesting points. Definitely a lot to unpack there. I think probably more than we have time for today. But
true. Sorry, I kind of rambled there a little bit.
No, you're good. I love doing this. We should definitely do this again. I've had a lot of fun doing this. I love talking college football. I think you bring up some really good points, but you almost illustrate my point kind of perfectly. How many people are talking about Boise State's 3-year stretch? It's like,
it doesn't matter. Yeah,
it doesn't matter. It's like they made the college football playoff, and now all anyone can seem to talk about is Boise. But now you've got this perceived power program in Boise. You've got 2 former power programs in Washington State and Oregon State, you've got teams that or programs that spend like power programs in San Diego State and in Colorado State. I think you're set up for the future here, even if you have schools at the bottom, but you've also got the Fresno States that can punch up above their weight. Utah State has shown in the past 5 years, even winning a Mountain West championship, they can punch above their weight. And Texas State showing a lot of promise. I have yet to see them deliver on that. I'd love to see them win the Sun Belt this year. I think the Sun Belt West even would be a great accomplishment for them. I'd love to see that coming into the PAC. I'm very excited for them to be in the PAC. But you do bring up some interesting points, and I think realistically, where I stand is that I think a 10-2 Pac-12 team gets in over an 11-1 Mountain West team, and that's my current, the way that the conferences are currently structured, the way that these teams have their power, the quote unquote power conference, out of conference schedule set up, the rivalry opponents. I think the strength of schedule is going to play a bigger and bigger role. You have them talking, the playoff committee talking about legitimate strength of schedule metrics that are going to play a big role. All of that is to entice the SEC to go to 9 games. It's really just, I think that strength of schedule is going to be so important going forward because of that, and because there are 2 conferences that are driving college football just entirely right now, and they're driving the bus, and nobody else has any power or control, and we can pretend we have as much influence as we want, but realistically it's unfortunate, the reality that it is right now. And man, I hope the Big 12 is able to beat them in the out of conference this year, but this is the game and we're trying to play it right now. And I think the Pac-12 is going to have the best chance to play it the way that it's designed. And going forward, that's really going to be this new reality. Now, that's not to say that, if there is the potential that you have the, Boise State and Washington State and Oregon State all at the top beating the crap out of each other year over year, and kind of having this SEC problem like they had this year of the top teams got, they dragged each other down, or even in the Big Ten, Ohio State had 2 losses. So, I think you run into this, maybe that I could see is that there's more potential for teams to beat each other up at the top, but eventually the cream rises to the top. And I think that the Pac-12 going forward is going to be the 5th best conference consistently. And it would be interesting to see myself proven wrong on that. I think that I'd be not so happy if that were the case as a Washington State and Pac-12 fan. But I think going forward, I stick with it. I think that's a bell that John Canzano and John Wilner have been ringing over and over and over again, is that it's this access and this publicity. That's what's going to get you the attention and the money that you really need, to be setting yourself up for this great reset, this great realignment, this whatever. I don't know if I want to call it great. It's only great in the fact that it's going to be big.
Miserable. It's miserable, repetitive.
It's going to be terrible for everybody, and we've been going through the same song and dance ever since the Longhorn Network wasn't allowed to come to the Pac-12 back in the early 2010s. That's where we're at, and it's been this chain reaction, and we're riding this wave. But I think going forward, I feel good about the Pac-12's position. I'm excited to see this new Pac-12, and I'm also excited to see the new Mountain West. I think the University of New Mexico is going to rise, finally access this potential in football that they have.
X a good coach. Jason X a really good coach.
100%. Watching him at Idaho this year, giving Oregon a run for their money in the early season, that was fantastic. And also a great performance in the FCS playoffs. I think really just where we're going is I would really, in my dream of dreams, I'd love to see Memphis and Tulane as football onlys, and UTSA as an all sports, and then call it, UNLV would be great if we can somehow, get them out of the clutches of the Mountain West. But I don't think Commissioner Navarez wants anything to do with that, because I think that the second the UNLV slips away, I think that's the moment when Air Force says, hey, our football program is going to go play our peers in the American, and that's a reality. Even if the Mountain West keeps their headquarters in Colorado Springs, I think that's a tough sell. And so again, would love to see UNLV in the Pac-12. Like you said, it's just, it's really hard. I think that's really the only thing that Pac fans can hope for 2026 in terms of additions. But we'll see what happens in 2027. I think it's feasible. I don't think the Big East wants Memphis. Is what the news is. I think
Yeah, there's no Memphis path. I can't see a Memphis path right now. And also, I just think Ed Scott's, their athletic director has been just pretty clear about it. Like a lot of this, I don't know how he can say no more publicly than he's saying. And I think there's a Memphis path in like 2030. Like when all this chaos is going on, maybe the cards all align and Memphis is there in 2030. But I can't see it right now. I can't see Memphis, Tulane, anything like that for before 2030.
I think the
For
only
me
way it
personally.
happens is if they both join the A10 as because that's a non-football conference and it's a
Yeah.
competitive one for basketball, as if they both join the A10, but then Tulane baseball is playing in a lower baseball conference, and then you've got Memphis baseball also doing the same thing, and that doesn't matter as much, but you've kind of made a semi-lateral move in terms of basketball skill, even though I would still put the A10 above the American. Plus Memphis and Tulane, you've got yourself
Yeah.
a very solid basketball conference with they're bringing in 5.5 a school. That's people kind of overlook that, but
Yeah,
um,
that's true. I didn't know that. I didn't know it was that high.
oh, it's really high. It's
Yeah.
for a conference with and it fits the geographic footprint. But the A10 wouldn't take Tulane without Memphis, so that'd have to be a package deal. They'd have to work together on it. Logistics of that are crazy. Maybe Tulane, if they got a full membership to the Sun Belt and then they sent their football team to we're talking crazy scenarios right now. And without this, this Big East component was kind of something, this pipe dream that Memphis fans want out. It's clear. But I was thinking
Basketball for sure. Yeah.
as you were saying that 2030 piece about the Pac-12, I mean, can you imagine the uproar if by 2030 Memphis hadn't found a new home? Oh man. Oh
I mean,
man.
I think Ed Scott is doing his best, and my opinion here, and I guess I'll kind of close it out and then maybe ask you to give your final thoughts before we finish this off,
It's good.
is just the AAC, the Mountain West, these two conferences, and look, like the Mountain West took as big of a blow as you can really take without dying. I'm not saying obviously the Mountain West took as a conference as big of a blow as you can without completely dying. But the AAC and the Mountain West, I think the leadership in these two conferences have looked at this new Pac-12, have done their best, and I actually think they've done a really good job at this of boxing them out of further expansion. I think both conferences have had that goal, and both conferences have achieved that goal to a pretty good level of keeping the Pac-12 from stealing teams, or not stealing. I don't want to say stealing because I don't think there's anything wrong with taking teams from another conference. But and they've said, all right, they're putting their boxing gloves on. UNLV is saying we're going to schedule 2 P5s a year. We're going to go 11-1. Memphis is saying let's go 12-0 in the new AAC in this AAC. Let's beat Tulane. I mean, Memphis was one of the teams, and Tulane was one of the teams. If they had a ball bounce a different way, they could have been a playoff team last year. And they're saying, let's get your boxing gloves on, Pac-12. Let's go. You're talking about all this access. None of it's happened yet. It's all hypothetical still. I mean, there is no actualized Pac-12 yet. There is no actualized, that doesn't exist yet. That's not to say it won't, but it doesn't exist yet. And they're saying, let's roll, buddy. Let's go. Fight time. And I think it's actually going to be a more interesting fight than people think it is. And I can't wait for it. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch these conferences try and duke it out. And maybe the Pac-12 will do exactly what everybody's assuming that it will, or maybe it won't. And maybe the AAC schools will go 12-0. There's one thing we know: even if you're in CUSA, 11-1 or 12-0, you're going to get the playoff spot. A pretty good chance of getting the playoff spot. And a 3-loss team from any of these G5 conferences is not going to get the playoff spot. And a really great top to bottom conference, whether it be the Pac-12 or the Big 12, doesn't always necessarily, look at the Big 10 getting 4 bids in, the ACC, despite being a weak conference at the bottom, getting 2 bids in, even though the Big 12 was better last year, I think. I just think it's all really interesting, man. So I'm going to give you the floor for your closing thoughts on this. Sorry, I keep throwing stuff at you that are kind of, it's a lot to try and respond to, but I think it's fight night. It's fight night. And I think it's fun to sit and talk about the hypotheticals, but I can't wait to get on the field. And, especially now that I'm Team Mountain West, whether I want to be or not. Let's roll, So closing thoughts from you.
Yeah, I mean, don't worry about it, man. I love it. This is as fun for me as it is for you, although realignment's never fun for anybody. I
It's good
think
for views.
it is great for views. These videos get clicks.
Yeah.
I would say, really, just to kind of to talk to your points, just without waxing lyrical too much here. I think it's, yeah, I think you're right to some extent. I think it is fight night, but I think the difference is, again, like you kind of talked on a little bit, is it's not going to be a top to bottom fight night. I don't see Charlotte competing very well with the likes of Fresno State. I think even Fresno State's going to walk all over them. And
Oh yeah.
I think you've got Memphis and Tulane, and any given year, maybe Army Navy with the triple option, which can just wreak havoc on a defense that's not airtight. I think that's the extent of it. Maybe in North Texas, UTSA, as I've talked about, I think is an emerging brand. I think they were at the height of their dominance when they came over from Conference USA. But really, I think it's going to be maybe the top third quarter of each of those conferences. I don't see necessarily UTEP giving anyone a run for their money, as far as um, in the Pac-12. I don't really see that happening. Sorry, I'm getting texts all over here.
No, you're okay. All good.
But I think I don't see UTEP challenging Washington State. It's just not going to happen, right? So I think top to bottom, they've got a great conference, and you're going to see the right things from the Pac-12 going forward, and that's going to be key here. And I think it's a lot more. I think it's a lot more important than people give it credit for, and I think that's where the Pac-12 is really going to rise above, is that top to bottom dominance. And I think that's probably where I'll leave it. I think I've said my piece on that. But thanks for having me on, Jason. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, everybody, make sure you're following his Twitter account. It is linked down below. I appreciate the conversation, and it's important to us. I know the SEC and the Big Ten are none of this matters anyway. It matters to us, man. We're fans of these schools. These are UNLV is my school. Like, this is family. This is heritage to me. And I know for a lot of Pac-12, Mountain West, even AAC schools, that's what it is too. And so, never let people in the media, if you're listening to this, never let people in the media tell you that your fandom and your football team is unimportant, because it absolutely is. If you're a UTEP fan and you're proud of that, it should mean everything to you, and you should not run away from that because, none of it matters anyway. Never let gatekeepers or elitists tell you that your football team that is a part of your family heritage and your tradition isn't important. So that's kind of what I'll close it on. But I appreciate you coming on, my man.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, I didn't mean to offend any UTEP fans. I go.
Oh no, no. I was just using them as an example. I don't think you did.
Yeah, of course.
No.
Hey guys, I really appreciate it. Again, Twitter's linked down below. Thanks, Jason. And also, I also make YouTube videos. I love making YouTube videos. So go subscribe to the YouTube. And Jason, hopefully we can do this again sometime, man. This was a lot of fun.
No problem. And I will put that YouTube channel in the description as well. Everybody, thank you for checking out the episode, everybody.
So there it is. That was my first ever interview with Jason Kelly, and the first video we made together. And hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, let me know in the comments below. If you made it this far, thank you and congratulations. And I hope I shared a channel with you that you can enjoy. And I've got actually another one of these videos that'll be coming out soon at some point. I use these as a intermediary between my other videos, but really appreciate you guys watching, and hope you have a great rest of your day or night, and be well.